Hi, this is Kurt Johnson doing another Mindful Monday from here at Shawbucks, Jamestown, New York, on Chautauqua Lake. You can't be happy all week if you don't start on Monday. Should you choose to be happy, life is choice. Today is part 3 of my Texas story. If you've missed the first 2 parts, you can find them on YouTube at Kurt B. Johnson. So you're probably wondering how and why I wound up in Dallas, Texas. At the age of 18, my best friend Joe Cale and I decided to take a motorcycle ride around the country, find jobs along the way. Dallas, Texas was our first destination. I remember getting to Dallas, and Joe and I stopped at the first job site we saw. He wanted to work construction. I had an auto mechanics background. I figured I could learn construction. The first job we went to, we got hired. It was an office building. We worked on the office building for about 2 weeks. The superintendent came out and said that they had their payroll messed up. They were going to change things around. We'd be back to work within a week or 2. He promised us, and he said he would call us. I went out and found a job on the other side of Dallas, Texas, tinting car windows at Spectrum Auto Tint. Joey found a job in a factory. The manager that hired me connected. We both had motorcycles. He was from Iowa. We were both single. The salary I started with was $200 a week until you learned the trade of auto tinting, and then you went on a square foot rate. The second night of work, Galen took me and said, you know, we'll stay late. You can finish your first car. It'll take probably 4 hours, but I want you to learn this trade. So he and I spent my second night of work there till 12 o'clock at night. I finished my first car. The next week, I started popping 1 or 2 cars out a day, which enabled me to make $400 a week take home, which that'd be like $1,200 or more a week today as a young 18-year-old. After 9 months or so of doing the window tint business, Joey wound up getting a factory job and injured, so he wound up having to move back to Jamestown, and I wound up being roommates with Galen. After about 10 months of working for Spectrum, there was a lot of push to go into the commercial, and a lot of the employees were disgruntled. They were working so hard, and a lot of the money from the auto tint was going to support the commercial installers, and they were making more money than us, and everyone was disgruntled and wanted to go out on their own. And my grandpa Al had set aside $10,000 for education for his 3 grandkids, and I decided that maybe I could take that money and start up my own business and have these employees join me, which they were all for. About that time, I tinted the windows of a gentleman that had MS, I think, and was unable to get out of his truck. And I was willing to tint the windows with him in the truck. He bummed a Marlboro cigarette from me. Back then I smoked Marlboro Reds. And him and I kind of hit it off. And he was impressed that Joe and I had traveled all the way to Texas on our motorcycles, and I was still there. And he asked me, is this all you want to do? And I said, no, actually, I was thinking of starting my own window tint business. A lot of the guys here want to move, and maybe we all go in on our own. And I was going to fund it with some money that I had. He said, I was in advertisement my whole career, and have you come up with a name for your business? And I said, yeah, I was thinking advanced auto tint. It would show up first in the yellow pages, and he thought that was a great idea. He then went on to say, you know, you probably wouldn't recognize me. I was one of the first Marlboro men. I was also the announcer for the Ed Sullivan Show, and once my line, my name's Wed Howard. I could assist you and give you some advertising principles that would help you market your business. And do you have a slogan for your business yet? And I said, well, no, not yet. He invited me to his house, gave me his phone number, said, I'll think of a slogan, and you can proceed from there. So a couple weeks went by. I went to Wed's house. We had another Marlboro. His wife wasn't impressed that I gave him a cigarette because he was trying to quit. Wed was probably around 65 years old. She had hoped he'd quit smoking sometime. So Wed, with his radio voice, he also had a radio show in the 1950s in Chicago called Melody Magazine. So with his radio voice, he said, "Kurt, I have your slogan. You've got it made in the shade with advanced auto tint." I fell in love with that line. I knew Wed knew exactly what he was talking about. He taught me 3 basic principles of advertising that I'll talk about in another episode. And before I opened my business or started, Wed had left with his fifth wheel trailer to head up north somewhere for the summer. So I proceeded to open my business. When I advertised, business seemed to take off. We had a lot of dealerships come on board with us that we were tinting windows. It was starting to go the right direction. One day, this customer wanted to see the owner. So I was out back in my office. They came back. My first thought is, oh no, what's this guy want? They said it was the guy with a 733i BMW, which I think back then was close to $40,000 or $50,000 vehicle. And I was nervous, so I get up front and I see this nice dressed man, and he asked me if I was the owner. I said yes. He questioned me, "How old are you?" I said, "I just turned 20. He said, "Who did your advertisements?" He goes, "Did you?" And I said, "Yes, I did." I said, "I learned from, Wed Howard." And he goes, "But you did them on your own?" I said, "Yes." He said, "I recognize your voice. You're the guy he talked to on the phone. And you had the best presentation of all the companies I called and interviewed, at least 6 of them. And you gave me the best sales pitch on the phone. Now I'm here to pick up my car, and this is a beautiful window tint job, and you're only 20. He said, "I saw your ad in the Dallas Times-Herald, and that's what attracted me. And being that I'm an advertisement, I did my due diligence and did the research. And here I am totally impressed with the job you did. I have an office in New York. I have one in Fort Worth, Texas, and I have another office in California. I'm sure you've heard of my ad that I headed up, Rolaids, How Do You Spell Relief? But I am so impressed. If this doesn't work out for you, you should consider a job in advertisement. You don't have to go to college for it." So here I am, all excited. I'm on a high from that. I had recently been contemplating going to church and feeling shame and guilt that I should be. I was raised Lutheran, and I thought if I didn't go to church, I might wind up in hell. And I came up with why do I really want to go to church? Am I going to church because I'm afraid of what people think? Am I going to church because I'm afraid of going to hell? Or would I be going to church out of love? And I was beginning to play around that fear and love create movement. A few nights later, I came home in a drunken stupor before I had even tried ecstasy. And I asked God, how am I supposed to love a God I'm supposed to fear? It just doesn't make sense. And I randomly opened my Bible and I pointed to scripture that was underlined, and it said, "For God so loved the world." Well, I didn't have to read any further. I got my answer. Choose love over fear. And it was at that point that I had learned a life lesson, and that I didn't have to go to church to be in love, and that if I did, I was probably going after shame or guilt or not an authentic reason to go to church. Then I tried ecstasy, and it was in the bars. You could legally buy it. I was a very shyful person in my 20s. I would go to these nightclubs and drink. I would never dance. I would occasionally talk to girls, but I wasn't very forward. And one night, one of the girls offered me to try this ecstasy. It'll be fun. She was asking me why I wasn't dancing, and she said, "It's a happy pill. It'll make you comfortable. You won't be afraid to dance." So I took this ecstasy pill. I danced all night like John Travolta. I had the best time of my life. There was no fear. I did not know that it was a hallucinogenic. I just knew it made me feel good. Today it's called Molly, MDMA. It's a synthetic drug. About the 3rd time I'd used it, I had went to Lake Texarkana with a couple of my friends, and they were couples and I was the single guy. And I had taken a double or triple dose of ecstasy, and they had done their normal one, and I'd had this hallucinogenic experience. And I just remember only experiencing love and having all this tingling, and that everything made sense. I had tapped into the divine creator energy, and in a weird way I could kind of be the eyes behind the eyes in different experiences. You might call it the Christ experience, and there was other experience I had as though I was that person even though I knew I wasn't. And so when I came out of this experience, I was uplifted, and I went 5 or 6 days without sleep. But on this experience, I had this epiphany that love and fear created movement. And while I was in this period, it was reflected to me like it was a battery, that compassion, kindness, and those traits of love was the positive pole of the battery, and that the negative side of the battery was shame, guilt, lack, limitation, anything that brought on fear. That was the negative side of the battery. And I wasn't sure if one was good or bad, but I felt that everything was okay, and that's how the world worked, was through creating movement through love and fear. That's where I came up with the energy part of energy of me from this experience. This epiphany sent me into a high, which you might call a mania, but it was only because I was so excited about this that I didn't sleep for 4 or 5 days. And anyone will go crazy after 4 or 5 days. One thing led to another. I wound up in a nut house, and I needed help, but I definitely didn't get the help I needed. They had no idea what they were working with. All they could say is it was an irreversible chemical imbalance. And so that's what kicked in my journey of my Texas experience. Even though it was horrific, I wouldn't trade it in for the world, because it has opened my life to a deeper truth. And now through different meditations, I can tap into that energy that ecstasy gave me without the drugs. I feel as though every day I'm kind of living in heaven on earth. I thank you guys for listening to my story. I know it's a crazy long story, but so many people have asked how I came up with these Mindful Mondays, and it was through life crises. It was through the School of Hard Knocks, and normally the School of Hard Knocks is you got to be tough if you're going to be stupid or make smarter choices. And to anyone that's young, I really want to stress that, it's easy enough to say don't do drugs, it's not safe, and blah, blah, blah. But really, drugs have an effect on you. Everyone reacts to drugs differently. Anytime you put a pill between your lips and swallow it, you don't know what's there, whether it's a pharmaceutical, an on-the-street drug, whether you're shooting heroin in your arm, you don't know what it's been cut with. It's just not safe. Even though I did have this Texas experience, I do believe there is a place for psychedelics and the treatment of depression and different life circumstances. It should only be done professionally. I don't believe psychedelics or any drug should be used for recreational use. The message I'd like to get to the kids or people wanting to try drugs off the street or get into their parents' pharmaceutical medications, you're playing with fire. You don't know all the effects. You may think you do. You might get a buzz. It's just not safe. Next thing you know, you try heroin, you have an overdose, you die. Not everyone's going to have the loving parents that would come down and assist escape them from an insane asylum in Texas. I'm not saying don't do drugs, but make sure you're in a controlled environment with professionals. And I'm not suggesting to stop taking your medications if you're taking them. Work with your doctors. Have an open conversation. Do your own research. There's plenty of places you can go to avoid taking medications by learning about diet of food, thought, and environment. And that's why I highly recommend going to drkellymd.com and listen to what a psychiatrist says about foods and medications, and do your own homework. Life is choice. It's time to make your choice and your own decisions. You don't always have to rely on the authorities. You need to become your own authority. Thank you for your time. Please like and share this video if you enjoyed it. You can also find me on YouTube at Kurt B. Johnson. Thank you guys. Have a great week.